good.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so we're live. This training is now being recorded. Hooray, I finally figured it out. Today what we're going to talk about is, first and foremost, what is attribution modeling? Why is it important? Why should you care? And kind of giving you some context around why Google is suddenly really invested in this and what we're doing to kind of control for that. Then we're going to get into attribution theory. So kind of what type of attribution makes sense. Are there advertisers where you shouldn't use an attribution model? And the answer is yes. Choosing an attribution model, so getting into the real nitty gritty of like, what are the models? Which one should you use for which advertiser, so you guys feel kind of equipped after this meeting, I'm hoping, to go and then kind of figure out with your high potential advertisers which ones you should use. Then there's going to be an implementation guide. I'm going to breeze kind of through that because I'm going to be sending you this deck afterwards, so don't really need to get into a lot of the specifics there. We can just kind of go through it quickly. And then finally, the last piece is testing and measuring impact. So the biggest kind of piece of this is, why would we do this? Trying to increase revenue, trying to increase profit. And I'm going to show you how to actually measure that for yourself so you can make sure that this is actually something that's happening, not something that, oh, we think we're raising revenue, but are we really? So first and foremost, oh, and by the way, if you wouldn't mind actually saving your questions to the end, it's a pretty comprehensive training, and it should take about an hour. So if you write them down, save them for later, we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Cool. So what is attribution modeling and why is this important? If you go to the next slide. At Google, what's really interesting is that for years and years and years, we had an attribution model, last click, that kind of made us heroes in the pre-mobile world. I mean, it really was trackable. You could see who was converting, what your metrics were, what your ROI was. And this was really great. This is why people started advertising on Google in the first place. But then about 10 years ago, iPhone was created and the mobile sphere shifted in a giant way. And you all know this. We've been talking about this for quarters and quarters and quarters. This is something that is impacting our business substantially, and I'm sure that you guys have already felt kind of the repercussions of that. And what's interesting is that the mindset that we had in this pre-mobile landscape of, make sure that you're tracking kind of the last click to conversion, which really made us great in the pre-mobile landscape, is hamstringing us now. And I think this is actually a lot of Google's own fault. We were really slow to adopt kind of the mobile mindset to really understand how this was playing into advertising, what the impact was. And so now we're kind of, with these tools, we're hoping to answer some of those questions. If you go to the next slide, this is a very familiar conversion path. This should look very kind of, similar to a lot of the things that you guys are doing. We've got our regular search, doing some research, Google, minivan with, back camera or side camera. And then you have a brand search, and then you've got a Google search for the best car dealership in town. What's interesting is that, in like our pre-mobile mindset, this worked. This was what was happening. People would go to their computer, sit down, say, I'm looking for a minivan, figure out which one they wanted, figure out which dealer they wanted to go to, and then go. But what we're seeing now is that this is not the order in which these searches occurred. They didn't occur in the same session or even on the same device. Our path to purchase these days is extremely complex, and it's becoming even more complex by the day, it seems like. So kind of this mindset of, or this assumption that this is how this is happening, oftentimes is proving to be incorrect. And so attribution modeling allows us to figure out what's actually happening. What are people actually doing when they're researching your product or figuring out whether or not they should buy from you or someone else, or if even what you're offering is something that they need. Yeah, go ahead to the next slide. This is actually a more accurate picture of what it would look like to actually buy a car. This consumer, let's call her Stacy, had 900 digital interactions before ultimately deciding to buy a car. And if you think about it, for a lot of people, buying a car or deciding to buy a car is one of the biggest purchases you're ever gonna make. It's a lot of money, and it's, there's a lot of different types out there, so you do a lot of legwork, a lot of research before actually deciding which one am I gonna buy, and then where am I gonna buy it from? Is there a specific place that has a deal? Is there somewhere near me that I trust? Am I gonna get a good deal on a loan? Should I do it there versus at a bank? There's a lot of things that go into actually making this purchase. So what would happen in this scenario if we just measured mobile search to just mobile conversions? Probably wouldn't see a ton of mobile conversions because people don't tend to convert for something like this on their phones. They tend to be in transit. Maybe they'll pass a car dealership and say, oh, I wonder if I should go to this one. Or, oh, this kind of car, maybe I should think about that. What we're doing now, and what Last Click has enabled us to do for a long time, is kind of measure success in silos. So the success of a mobile search campaign, or just mobile in general, or the success of a display campaign. Is it converting, is it not? Or YouTube, or whatever it is that we're doing. And often this kind of confirmed our belief that because upper funnel activities don't convert as well as like a branded search, they're not useful. They're not driving revenue. So why would we do them? Why would we spend a lot of money doing that if it's not really going to be performative for our advertisers? So if you go to the next slide, this is another one of my favorite ones. This is something that I actually presented to the group that we had at the Digital Breakfast back in March. And this is another consumer, let's call her Amy. And in January of this year, she planned a trip to Disney World. This is actually a real person. And we're just looking at her month of November when she made the purchases for Disney World. And as you can see, throughout the month, she had almost 19,000 digital moments. And this is phone, this is tablet, this is computer, this is any time that she was engaging with any sort of digital content. And that's a lot. And it shows, again, how mobile we've become, how much more engaged we've become. 19,000 moments in a month. It's kind of amazing. You know, I thought so too. The first time that I saw this, I was like, this couldn't possibly be accurate. But the reason why they chose this person as a case study is that this is actually extremely average. This is something that is very, very common. And I'm guessing that a lot of you have, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's specific to Disney World. Sorry, I know.
Yeah. No worries. So actually, if you go to the next slide. So it's any time that she interacted with digital content at all, went to a website, played a game, watched a video, clicked on an ad, did a search. So this kind of any time that she opened her computer, took up her tablet or phone and was online, pretty much. So if we break down this giant graph here into a couple of different purchases, the one that we're actually going to focus on is the third one, Disney World. So again, of the 19,000, you can see all of these little ticks are times when she was looking specifically for things related to Disney World. And if you actually even go to the next slide, what you're going to see here is that the three, actually if you click a couple times, I might have, yeah, so the purchases that she did, were here, here, and here. So at the very, very end of the month is when she actually purchased. And if you click one more time, she had all of these, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of interactions that led up to 3 purchases. And this is flight, hotel, and made a restaurant reservation. So 419 interactions led to 3 separate purchases. Again, not that uncommon, especially for travel, because when you're traveling, you want to research, what am I going to get the best deal on a flight, on a hotel? What has the best reviews? Do I want to go to this restaurant versus this restaurant? And all of these people are advertising, and all of them want her business. So they had 419 interactions to actually get in front of her, make sure that she was, kind of their brand was top of mind when she was making this decision for her purchase, and actually influence her to make the purchase. So if you go to the next slide here, another really interesting thing here is that 87% of these interactions occurred on her phone. So I definitely fall into this trope. I take a bus every day to and from work, from San Francisco to Mountain View, and I have a lot of time. I've got like 3 hours a day when I'm like kind of trapped on the bus and don't really have a lot to do. So I'll research purchases, or maybe I've got to find an electrician for my house, something like that. And that's a really good time for me to do that. And I can't use my computer because I often don't have Wi-Fi. So it's me on my phone in transit thinking, oh, I've got to do this, or oh, I should look at this, or oh, maybe I'll go see a movie tonight. Which one should I see? For this purchase, which is a big purchase, it's travel, 87% occurred on mobile phones. And if we're looking just for conversions, just for the efforts that are really good ROI-wise, at least as far as we can tell with Last Click, that means we're missing out on like 87% of her research, of her considering, evaluating, and actually making a purchase decision, which means that we're missing out on a ton of stuff. So if you go to the next slide, this is actually my favorite analogy for understanding. This is actually kind of when it clicked for me that this is important. How many of you guys played soccer or like another team sport? Yeah? I played soccer in high school, and I was a center midfielder.
So you ran a lot.
I ran a lot, but I didn't actually get to do a ton in terms of like what matters to the game. I never really scored goals, didn't really save balls. It was really kind of, supportive of kind of people who were doing more stuff. So what Last Click does is it basically says if you win a soccer game, all of the credit for winning that game goes to the center forward who shot the goal, right? And as you guys know, because you play soccer, that's not how it works. There's so many interactions and so many other players. Like again, I wasn't really doing a ton in terms of scoring goals or saving balls, but they tell me that my role is really kind of essential to the team. So a lot of stuff happened in between to actually make sure that score came out for the winning team. And this is really important to consider because this is a really, really good way to map, all of the interactions that you have before actually making a purchase, and then giving the entire purchase credit to the last thing that kind of led to that purchase decision, even if they already knew and had already decided that that's what they wanted to do. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. So if you go to the next slide, how many of you see in your accounts that branded search or like really, really close like phrase match or exact match search campaigns are the highest converting? Yeah? So when we see that and when you guys are answerable to the CMOs of the companies that you work for who are really just interested in numbers at the end of the day, the ones with the highest return on investment, at least as far as we can see in AdWords, tend to get the highest investment, right?
Yeah.
What happens when you just look at last click is that there's so much over attribution to the bottom of the funnel. So what you end up doing is you end up adding incremental value, incremental value, incremental value. And what you tend to see is that it either stagnates. So you add more money and nothing really happens. It just becomes more expensive. Or it becomes so expensive to actually get that next conversion that it's really not sustainable. So this is kind of like a classic case of point of diminishing returns. If you add 1 unit of production to an efficient system, at some point it's going to become inefficient. And that's kind of what happens with this. We say, this is what's working. This is what, through our attribution model that we're using, this is what seems to be converting the best. We're going to channel all of our spend here. And then you kind of forget about, or don't really kind of take the time to think about higher funnel or mid funnel activities. So either the number of people who know about you and can convert maxes out, or it just takes so much to drive that type of discovery through branded search that it's really not cost effective. So if we go to the next slide, what attribution modeling does is it allows you to kind of take a step back and look at the full picture of what are people doing before they purchase. And the solution really is to kind of bid on keywords and products that initiate or assist. So kind of getting the defense players and the center kind of running backs like me, or midfielders like me, some credit for actually assisting in the total conversion. What that leads to is efficient budget allocation. You're getting discovery that's really good, getting people through the funnel faster, getting more people converting so that with a certain budget, you get more and more conversions, and you achieve an optimal CPA when you're looking at it from an account level, not just a campaign level. Does that make sense? That's maybe the hardest part of this presentation, and it took me like 3 weeks to get it. So just want to make sure that before we move on, that kind of resonates with you guys and it makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on a little bit to attribution theory and kind of, again, why this matters for your accounts and kind of how to think about it when you're positioning it to your advertisers that you work with. Measurement in this capacity isn't really about limiting potential. It's not kind of saying, well, this doesn't really work as well as we thought it did, but it's about finding opportunity for growth, for getting more people to convert. And this is a differentiation that's really important in my eyes because it's not about scaling back something that's working. It's about augmenting what's already working so that you get more people, more purchases, more revenue, and people are really happy with the advertising that they're doing. So at Google, we have the privilege of working with marketers across different industries across the world, and we recognize some leaders in this capacity that really aren't stuck on this. And there's a couple of things that they do that are really interesting to note. So the first one is they figure out from their business, again, they take a step back and they say, what matters? What are we looking for at the end of the day? And you guys all have a really good finger on this because that's how you measure your KPIs or your deliverables to your advertisers. You know what kind of growth they want or what kind of results that they want to see from their advertising account. It's helpful to take a look at kind of from a business perspective, what do they need to grow? What do they just need to stay afloat and how do you fit into that? So what matters to them and how can we help them deliver through advertising? And then you kind of see, what's working. These leaders aren't just bringing their existing models forward. They're taking a step back again and kind of looking at the big picture and seeing what's working now and what can we do to kind of lift that up. Looking at new tools, new estimates, and kind of trying to better understand what's available to help accomplish kind of the overall business goals that they want. And then lastly, optimizations aside, like what's possible? What can you do? Why do products like Gmail ads exist if they're not great converters? Like, what's the point? So it's kind of trying to understand, where does this all fit in and what's possible to achieve in an AdWords account through something like taking a wider lens and looking kind of at a wider view of kind of advertising as a whole, rather than this campaign does this and this campaign does this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to know what matters, again, business objectives. To know what's working, this is actually where attribution modeling can kind of help you understand right now what is working in your account. And I'll kind of show you guys how to do that in a bit. But basically, it can show you, with the current advertising that you're doing, what's your path to purchase? What's your timeline? How long does it take somebody to go from clicking on your ad to converting? And which campaigns with different models are actually driving results for you, or incremental results for you? So you can then figure out where you can allocate your budget. So testing and measuring impact with new budget allocation to make sure that we are actually driving the type of results that we want. So this is the part where we kind of have to determine how important it is to go beyond last click. And as I said at the very beginning, there are going to be some advertisers that are not going to benefit from going beyond last click attribution. There are going to be, so if you go to the next one, there are some advertisers that really don't need a long view of their performance. This is something like direct response, like local classifieds, like a dentist, for example. It's somebody that, or like an electrician or a plumber, where if you are searching, like I need a plumber same day, you're not going to need to evaluate over a week whether or not you want to use this plumber versus another plumber. You're not going to go online and be like, plumbers in the San Francisco Bay Area, which one's the best? It's mostly going to be same day. I need something fixed right now. Who's the best? Who's kind of top of mind? Who's close? And in that case, you don't really need to look beyond like, how are my Gmail ads doing? How are my display ads doing? Because that's the type of direct response that works really, really well with regular search campaigns. To actually assess that and kind of figure out whether or not your advertiser kind of fits into that bucket, it's important to kind of take a look at the attribution modeling thing that I actually waitlisted all of your accounts for. You guys have it now in there, or you should. And I'll show you kind of a walkthrough about how to actually take a look at this. But you can see with like time lag and path to conversion, like if it's a pretty long time lag, like 5 or 6 days, that's someone that could benefit from an attribution model. So that's somebody who's taking a long time between becoming aware and actually purchasing. And in those 5 days, they're looking at a lot of other people. And that's a lot of brand loyalty up for grabs. So my example for you guys on the next slide is Berkey's, which I know Colby manages, and I know he's not here today. But Berkey's, again, it's kind of it's all good. Berkey's doesn't necessarily need a more advanced attribution model. As you can see, their time lag is like less than a day to conversion, which is kind of what you would expect for an advertiser like this. It's pretty easy to see that plumbing. Yeah, and they do it some, I think, HVAC maybe, but it's mostly plumbing. And what happens here is that somebody needs plumbing. They're looking, I need something fixed right now. And as you can see, like 13,000 people are coming in less than 1 day. And the number of people who are coming in greater than 1 day are like in the hundreds. So the grand majority of people are coming in less than 1. If you go to the next slide, this is Sportsman's Warehouse, which I know is Andrew's account, which we've worked on a lot together. And this is one that definitely needs one. And can anyone tell me why?
Yeah, there's a lot of research involved.
Yes.
5.6 days to convert.
Yeah. So there's
a lot of competitors too, so they don't necessarily need it right now. They're just finding the best.
Yeah. And when you have something that's a 5.6 day to conversion, this actually is kind of irregular for even an e-commerce site. Because with e-commerce, when you have like a shopping campaign or like a presence that lets you shop online, people tend to do like 1 or 2 days of like comparison shopping, but they pretty much know when they come to your site that that's what they want to buy. For this, because of the nature of the merchandise, there's a lot more evaluation that goes on. And there are a lot of competitors in the market. So it could be, I want to see who has deals. I want to see where I'm going to get the best value for this. Does this person have free shipping? And so the 5.6 days means that we need to figure out, what are people doing? What are their touch points in between becoming aware and actually purchasing? And how can we get more people from the becoming aware point to the purchasing point?
Those are horrible results. $350,000 in 30 days. Come on, A-Dubs.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just it's sort of
Yeah.
It's sort of tracking.
Yes.
Is there a way to look specifically? So I forget hours. Is it within 24 hours? Is that all the time?
I believe so. It's a 24-hour.
So then that would be a key. So you can see like time getting stored because it's
Although what you could see is if somebody became aware of Sportsman's Warehouse like a week previous and then was like doing research and then did like near me, that's when we cookie them and that's when the conversion comes. So like in that case, you could do it because we find out that they know you way earlier and then their actual local search and then their in-store conversion actually is something that we can track. And as you know, we looked at that yesterday. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about just a lot lately. So I had a client yesterday who was telling me that his SEO company was saying that they were driving half of the volume and stuff. And I was like, let's just go and look at attribution modeling. So we went into analytics, looked at first click, last click, and first click was actually 90%.
Usually it's these.
Yeah, it's like all the introduction to their brand was coming from search.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the attribution was going to direct and search.
Yeah.
So it was good for the client who loved it because it's like, oh, you guys are actually doing a lot more.
Well, and that's the thing about attribution modeling too, is that you don't necessarily need to implement a model for this to work. Just like Andrew said, like you can actually take a look at like the comparison between different models and see like first click attribution versus like time decay versus, linear, which we're all going to get into. You will know what that means after this training. What is actually showing up as like an important piece here? Where are they becoming aware? Where are they actually, again, kind of touching base with us when they're evaluating? Like, where are they going? And then how can you influence that? So you can, like, if you don't want to necessarily implement this right away, you don't have to, but it is worthwhile to know kind of the differentiation between what's going on and just kind of position that to your advertiser, and we'll get into that. So next slide, another kind of little piece here is that each attribution model works across devices, which is way more important than it sounds. This is something that it used to be, we would just look at like computer to computer or like phone to phone, but this is really advanced, and it basically says if I become aware of you guys on my phone, and then I'm on my computer doing research, and then I see an ad and click on an ad, and then I convert on my tablet, we can track it all the way through. And that's kind of through the cross-device conversion capability that we've rolled into this. So
it's kind of awesome that you have all three of those in front of you.
Isn't that nerdy? It's so nerdy. I know. I was saying to my Uber driver this morning, I was like, I've got my phone, my tablet, my watch, my computer, my other computer. Like, this is bad. I'm definitely a techie. And they're all Apple products too, to tell. So finally, we're going to get into the nitty gritty, which attribution models exist, which one's going to be right for you guys. This is kind of like the main event. Now that I've kind of like talked your ear off about why this is important and why we should do it. This is kind of how we figure out which one makes the most sense for which advertiser.
Amanda?
Yes.
Real quick, before we move on to that, how do you see the conversion? I can show you. What you're looking at.
And at the end too, I can kind of take you through, if one of you has an account that you want me to take a look at and just like, do an analysis in AdWords, we can do that too. And by the way too, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning of the training, but this is all implementable in AdWords. You don't necessarily need to do it in analytics. In fact, sometimes it's better to do it in AdWords just because you have all of the advertising information right there. So these are the 5 standard models. There is one other model that we'll talk about close to the end of this section, but the 5 rule-based standard models are last click, which of course is the default. That's the one that we know and that we kind of love.
Still do sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, for certain advertisers, again, it makes sense. If it's not something that needs a lot of evaluation, like you don't necessarily need it. And then we have time decay, linear, position-based, and then first click, which is the inverse of last click. So starting with last click, this is the default model. It's the most conservative. And again, it gives all of the attribution to the last thing that was clicked before you converted. And by and large in your accounts, that's the reason why you're seeing the brand search converts the best. It's because a lot of stuff happened, a lot of touch points happened. You get a lot of like hits on your Gmail ads campaign or like a lot of hits on your YouTube campaign. They're not going to convert, and then they'll come through and convert on an RLSA campaign or on a branded search campaign, which is very unsurprising. And that's kind of why that happens. And this is best for, again, direct path to conversion, like same day services, classifieds, local listing ads, that are, very, very quick. I just need something this second. I need somebody to come out and clean my house, whatever. that's the type of thing that this works best for. The next one is time decay. And this is the second most conservative model. It's basically a really good fit for advertisers who are wary of upper funnel activity. So they're like, we don't see ROI on Gmail or display or YouTube or anything that has to do with anything beyond search. We're not sure if we want to do it, but we're maybe open to seeing whether or not this could be something that works for us. What it does is it gives more credit to clicks that happen closer in time to the conversion. So if you have somebody who has like a 2-day path to conversion, it's going to give more credit for the conversion to the clicks that happened on the day of the conversion, not than on the day before. And again, this is best for advertisers who are hesitant to adopt higher funnel and whose time lag to conversion is like, I said 1.5 days or lower. I would say maybe 2 days or lower. So like anyone who's like within kind of the 2-day range or below, this is a good place to start because it means that there's not a giant path to conversion. There is some evaluation that goes on. They're not converting immediately, but you know, it's not like a 10-day or like a 2-month long conversion where it's like we really need to be hitting them all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. When you say more credit, does that mean you can give a fraction of the conversion?
Yes, and that's exactly what attribution modeling does. Is it gives fractional credit to different touch points along the way.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then if you go to the next one, linear. This is kind of our in between, not too conservative, not too growth oriented. It's one of my favorite ones actually. And basically what it does is it distributes credit pretty evenly across every single touch point that happens. So the first entry point is going to get as much credit as the last one. Again, this is fractional. So if we have 4 touch points to conversion, each one of them is going to get 0.25 of a conversion. So that's if you implement an attribution model and you start seeing like this campaign got like 6.75 conversions, that's what's happening there. It means that this is not necessarily like a really high bottom funnel activity, but it is something that is really important for influencing later conversions as kind of the 0.75. This is best for advertisers. I said extremely aggressive. No, it's for kind of like moderately aggressive. They're interested. They want to do higher funnel. They've not seen the return on it, but they're curious. And they want to kind of see, is this something that is helping me? This is the model to follow for that. And then we have position-based. This is the most difficult to understand, in my opinion. What happens here is that 40% of the conversion credit goes to the first entry point. Another 40% goes to the last click to conversion. And then the 20% in the middle is distributed evenly among any other kind of touch point that happens. So 80% is to first and last click, and then 20% across anything else that happened.
Was that just made up?
I think the reason why they did this is that they wanted to show, it's like for people who really like last click and you're pretty convinced that they could benefit from this,
yeah.
And you want to show like, hey, look, using position-based, like you are getting a lot of entry here and a lot of exit here. So it kind of just, like helps you prove your case for this is why this is important for you.
So yeah,
yeah. No, it's totally.
So basically, it splits the attribution mostly off the first and last. Right?
Yeah.
And so you can tell, I guess,
Basically, it's
more effective as a last click model or a first click model.
So I'll give you an example. Say we have an advertiser that's selling, what do we think? Vests, let's say vests, I'm wearing a vest today. And it's like a clothing retailer. And I become aware of this clothing retailer through a YouTube ad. And they've got a really cool ad, it's shoppable True View maybe. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I click on the ad, go to their site. I don't convert right away. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll go look at the similar thing somewhere else that's maybe cheaper. And then I see a display ad, I'm remarketed with maybe dynamic remarketing, maybe regular remarketing. And I'm kind of like, it's a couple days before I actually decide, okay, I really do want to do this. So I search the brand, I go through brand search, click on them, buy the coat. What it does is it says 40% of that conversion of me spending money goes to YouTube. So YouTube conversions go way, way up.
Because they introduce you.
Exactly.
Which the intro point gets left out most of the time with last click.
Yes.
Most of the time you have no
Like
idea
98%
how
of the
they're
time.
getting into the funnel. Yeah. And that's really difficult because then it's like you start pausing stuff and you're like, well, this is the one that's working.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Last click, like we have 0 conversions from these Gmail ads or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're getting hits. Like you see that you're getting clicks.
Yeah.
People are interested. They're just not converting. And so the number one thing that I hear from you guys about Gmail is like, oh, well, we're getting a lot of clicks but no conversions, so we're going to pause it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is something that shows you, like, if this is something that is really leading to conversions, position-based will tell you that. It'll say, this % of the conversions that you're getting started with Gmail or with YouTube or whatever kind of medium or high funnel activity that we're doing. So you can then say to your advertiser, look, I know that this doesn't look like it's directly converting, but it is assisting in like X% of these conversions. Yeah. Or John.
Yeah, so with the last click attribution, isn't there typically a 60 or 90 day conversion window? So if they did convert the email ad and they do convert within 60 or 90 day conversion window, shouldn't it still?
Yeah, but not if they come back through a different campaign.
Which is typically what they do.
Branding campaign, give it to the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know what the entry.
So the only
And
time
then they're like,
go
go
dumb
dumb
a brand campaign
we're
is saying.
There we go.
Yeah.
They'll cause that short-term branding.
And what you can do too is these are the same models that work in analytics. And so if you guys do have analytics access to any of these accounts, this is something that will show in analytics that won't necessarily show in AdWords. AdWords, you can just get started right away. It just shows you if you have people coming back through like branded RLSA or just regular RLSA. This is something that can show like this campaign isn't necessarily the best converting because this is what we're seeing here. But in analytics too, it'll show you if you have somebody that comes through like a paid click and then comes organically, position-based will show you paid search was the first click, organic was the second click, but it did assist. And so this advertising did work for you in this kind of capacity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah, please. That's what I'm here for. No. Is it like super relevant to this though?
I mean, this is great. I just don't understand how to use this part. I mean, I can look at
Yeah.
stuff here, you know what I mean? And I understand what this does now. I just don't understand how to really contribute. See it if it's coming from YouTube or.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And so what I would say the best use case for this one is if you have, and I kind of put here, if you have advertisers who are already advertising on YouTube or display who might not be seeing the results there or might not be seeing like the ROI or like can't really justify the spend to their CMOs, but you know that or you have a hunch that this is something that actually really is driving conversions, just not directly, that's how you can show it to them. And this is something that like, again, if you have people who are doing that and want to grow their presence, this shows you how responsible something like a YouTube or display campaign is in assisting conversions so that you can invest more money there, assist more conversions, get more conversions, have higher ROI. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think it's
No, that's okay. And again, this is the most difficult one to understand, so I totally get it, and we can kind of get into it maybe at the end. So the last one here, again, is our inverse of first click. This is not one that I usually recommend. Just like I wouldn't usually recommend last click, except for in some cases. This is one if you have an advertiser that's like really looking to grow, has a lot of money to spend, and does not really care about like performance at all, or like doesn't really have the strict ROI KPIs that they're looking for. They just want to like spend $300,000 and like do a massive YouTube campaign and just float the name out there. It gives all the credit for a conversion to the first click. So if I become aware of you on a YouTube campaign, and I don't convert for like a week, but I still convert through another campaign, YouTube's gonna get all the credit for that. So it's gonna look like YouTube is really converting the best. Whereas we know, like usually people tend to convert after kind of going through multiple touch points. So this one doesn't really give any fractional credit at all to any kind of assisted conversions. And again, this is really good if you have somebody who's really looking to like explosively grow, this is what you should do. But otherwise, it's probably not gonna be good for your regular advertiser, sure.
I have a quick question, because obviously, like, if they clear your cookies, then this is not gonna, like, if they visit the website, clear your cookies, and then they come back through a PPC campaign, it's gonna forget about first interaction.
Yeah.
So, you know, already considering that, is there a timeline where between the first click and the last click, if it's, let's say it's a year, would people forget about that first interaction because it's been so long? Like, is there a timeline where they lose the connection?
That's a really good question. I think that there are time limits on the cookies that Google distributes whenever you're tagged with an ad. Just like when you do remarketing, usually you can set an expiration like 30, 60, 90, 180 days. I don't know what the default one is, and I'll have to check for you. Again, this actually brings up a really important point about attribution too, is that like this is not perfect data. You're not going to get a 100% perfect picture of what's happening at all times. People use ad blockers. People clear their cookies. People go in incognito mode. Like things happen, and we can't account for 100% of the cases. But it's kind of like, you know, last click is kind of like advertising with a blindfold on. This one's like having really kind of like not super great vision, but taking the blindfold off and like suddenly seeing the world. It's not going to give you 100% a clear picture, but you're going to see way, way, way more than you did previously. So it's really important to keep in mind. And when you're talking about this to your advertisers, it's not like, now we're going to get like the best view possible. It's like, we're going to get about 85% of the way there. And there's still kind of the cases that we can't account for, like, again, people clearing their cookies or, you know, doing something or like going on a different computer altogether and not signed in and doing paid search that way. Does that make sense?
Most people don't do that though.
Most people don't, yeah.
Even know that exists.
We feel like we do, because like all of us are very entrenched online all day, every day. And to be totally honest with you guys, before I even started working at Google and with AdWords, I was not sure that AdWords worked, because I was like, I don't click on ads, like I don't know. But this is because what we do is very separate from like the grand majority of people online. And we're very aware of like behavior online. Like if you're clicking on an ad, that's going to get attributed to someone's going to pay for that. So like you are way more in tune with that than like your average person. So it's just something to keep in mind, that like this is something that we know the grand majority of people are not doing. Even though we sometimes do it, like most people online don't clear their cookies like ever. So if you go to the next slide, there is a sixth model, and this is a beta, which I've whitelisted all of you guys for. Not everybody is eligible for it. This is data-driven attribution, and what it does is it leverages a really sophisticated machine learning algorithm to basically give credit or more credit to, you know, advertising or like pathways that assisted more in the conversion then, and less credit in things that didn't assist as much or kind of didn't, you know, drive evaluation or consideration as much as another one. And this requires a lot of conversion data. So something like a Sportsman's Warehouse, for example, definitely can use data-driven and should use data-driven attribution, because it's very optimized for the advertiser. It's dynamic and it updates instantly. The rules-based attribution models that we talked about, those update about once a week. So it's extremely like in the moment, it understands the best user behavior to conversion so that you can have the best possible way to optimize like budgets and campaigns to make sure that you're getting good people through the door and actually purchasing.
So mostly e-com.
Mostly e-com. If you have to, like, you know, somebody that gets a ton of like lead fill outs or, you know, just like, it's, I think, let me see if it says here. It doesn't say exactly how many, but I think it's like maybe 1,000 or 5,000 in 30 days conversions, maybe?
Yeah, right here, 800.
Oh, sorry. 20,000 clicks and 800 conversions over a 30-day period. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is typically more tailored towards e-commerce, or something that just tends to get a lot of hits. If you go to the next slide, what happens here is we have an algorithm, again, that contrasts kind of exactly what happened and kind of what people did, what their pathway was before the conversions, with what could have happened. So it kind of takes a look at, you know, here's what did happen, and here's what you could have done, or kind of what the path that they could have taken, and it helps you optimize kind of, this is something that you're underutilizing. This is a pathway that a lot of people seem to be engaged with, that you're really not spending a lot of money on. And it gives you a lot of kind of ammo to then optimize and spend that budget efficiently so that you're getting more people through the door, more consideration, more evaluation, with the hope that we're going to get more profit from it at the end of the day. Factors such as like number of ad interactions, the order of exposure, so kind of the order in which they see your ads, and the creative assets used in each conversion path are all incorporated into these results. So again, it's extremely tailored to each specific account. It's very dynamic, and it's really, really good for if you have a lot of conversion data and want to know exactly what's happening. Again, not a perfect picture, but it gets you very close. So with data-driven attribution, again, these algorithms are really smart. Google machine learning is like really on the cutting edge of technology these days, and this is the best way to utilize it. This, by the way, is also available if any of your advertisers use like paid analytics, like Analytics Premium or 360. This is available in Analytics. It is currently a beta in AdWords. Data-driven takes converting and non-converting paths into account. So like if somebody is like interacting with you and they're looking at ads, clicking on ads, all of that, and then they don't convert, we take that into account. If they do convert, definitely take that into account. Rules-based only takes it into account when somebody converted. So again, it's kind of that what could have happened, like this person fell off here, or this person decided to go somewhere else at this point. So this one maybe needs to be more efficient, or maybe you need to use different creatives. It kind of gives you like way more detailed recommendations that way. With rules-based, you can choose a model with a rules-based model that kind of ascribes the best to the type of advertiser that you have, but it's not really, you can't really personalize it, whereas again, this is very dynamic. And the last thing is that regularly updated based on changes, based on behavior patterns that change, based on like seasonality, time of year. And the rules-based need to be kind of revisited like every so often. It can be applied as historical data, but it's kind of like you kind of need to make sure that this is something that's still working for you if you do decide to implement this model. But yeah, go ahead to the next slide. If you don't have enough conversion data, not to worry. Rules-based attribution models are totally fine. And often what we see, and actually I worked with an advertiser on a case study on this, we weren't quite at the data-driven attribution like conversion level. We got them there through using another model and seeing which parts of the funnel needed to be optimized and kind of were running a little bit more inefficiently, and got them up to where they needed to be. And now we're using data-driven. So it's an option for sure. And let me know if you guys have any questions about that too, because that's kind of the kind of sophisticated, very fiddly one. Any questions about the models before we move on into kind of quickly breezing through the implementation? Any other questions? Again, this is resonating.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So
Cool.
I have a
Yeah.
Because I was messing around with the way.
Yeah, please.
And, it says that the data-driven attribution model is available for some, but not all of the converting actions. And so what?
Is this for sportsmen's?
Yeah. But it says that on another one too.
Huh. Some but not all.
Some but not all, and it says for anything that's not.
It could be if you have any, like, I don't know if it's going to count for store visits, honestly, because that's not something that we can directly tie to a purchase. It's really for like direct converting, like online pathways.
So this is only looking at those pathways.
No. You know what? I'll look into that for you. I'm not sure.
I just looked at a couple of
Yeah, totally. But yeah, no, I'll definitely take a look at that and see what's going on. But yeah, again, it kind of depends on the amount of conversion data. So it could be that you have, like, for some conversion actions, just not enough conversion data. Like for purchase, you definitely have enough, but for like, if you have like a lead form and you've only got like 300, might not be enough. So again, we're gonna kind of, just kind of glide by this section a little bit. It's very like in-depth. It's gonna just kind of go step by step. Yeah, just kind of quick call outs. Like it's pretty easy to do. Again, you can do this right in AdWords. At the end, for those of you who have time, I can go through and kind of show you an example of how you might want to look at this. If you go to the next slide, you kind of can kind of spec out different models in the attribution modeling tool that kind of allow you to see which model actually fits best with the advertiser, what's actually happening with each model. Like, is one campaign getting super over attribution? Or are we kind of seeing, a little bit more even results with something like linear or time to gay or something like that? Next slide. This just shows you how to implement this. Again, you're going to get this deck, so don't need to worry about this right now. And then, yeah, so the important thing to note here too is that all of these attribution models work with auto bidding, which is really cool. So if we're optimizing for conversions with conversion optimizers or eCPC, this is something that will take that into account. So if we're attributing like 0.5 of a conversion to YouTube and we see that and the auto bidder sees that and you have it running on the YouTube campaign, it's gonna optimize for those conversions. So that's the way that we see conversions grow kind of in the immediate term, is like if we see finally that YouTube is driving more conversions than we thought because we're looking at a longer view of it, that's something that conversion optimizer will account for. You'll get more people in the door, you'll get more conversions. So that's actually how to make it really actionable immediately for your advertisers. And then finally, again, automated bidding. This is something if you're not doing automated bidding and you want to do an attribution model, they really do go hand in hand. So this is something that can really if you're looking to kind of grow these more like mid-funnel, which again, we really should be considering the mobile landscape, this is something that we should be doing together. Yeah, great, cool. So finally, this is all well and good. I mean, again, it makes sense from a data standpoint, like why this is important and why we should be doing this. But the real piece of this that is kind of maybe the most important, aside from choosing your model and getting it going, is knowing how to test the attribution model and knowing how to measure the impact. Besides just kind of, gut check, did conversions go up? Or is this working for me? So I'm going to show you kind of quickly how to kind of evaluate what tests you can run to make sure that this is actually doing a good job for you. So again, what's the point of all this? At the end of the day, attribution is a way to attribute good performance to higher funnel products so that accounts can grow sustainably and you can actually get more revenue. That's by and large what people want, is they want more people to convert, more people to use their service, more people to buy their product. That's the reason to advertise in the first place. And we need to make sure that it's actually doing that. If you're doing an attribution model, you're optimizing for higher funnel activities, and that's not happening, we need to know, we need to kind of figure out what to do next. Again, kind of picking a model should connect with your goals for your advertising account. So kind of taking a step back to the theory part of it, it's important to know and kind of have a very clear understanding with the advertiser, like what exactly do they want? Besides just like, oh, we want form fill outs. Well, what do we want after that? Do we want people to go to our college? Do we want people to, use our service or subscribe to our magazine? Like, what is it actually that we want to do? And what is the revenue impact of that? And just having a good understanding of kind of where they need to be to actually kind of stay afloat and grow informs the type of decisions that you can make with the attribution model. If you go to the next slide. The first thing that you need to do is establish a control period. It's best to do this not during a busy season. So if your account is going into any kind of seasonality right now, probably not going to be a good, unless you want to, but it is risky. It's really good to test it in kind of like a lower kind of downtime, so that you can make mistakes or kind of figure out, the right thing to do so that when busy season does come along or when its seasonality does kick in, you're very well informed and very well equipped to actually drive a lot of really good interactions. It's also important once you update your attribution model to update your bids as well. So a lot of times what will happen is you'll update your attribution model and then not do anything, and you'll just kind of start to see the performance and oh, this kind of confirms what I thought. It's important to make sure that you're still bidding based on where performance is coming from. So if we're looking kind of longer at the conversion cycle and we're seeing that certain conversions maybe aren't performing as well, bid down on them. Or you see suddenly, this keyword that we didn't think was doing so well is doing really well, bid up. The same type of rules applies when you're regularly optimizing an account. Make sure that you're continuing to do that. Again, monitor your tests, no brainer. Make sure that, again, this is actually driving the results that you want, and then evaluate kind of at the end of the control period whether or not we actually saw an uptick in results. Again, you guys are going to get this deck, so we're not going to spend too much time here. Again, big call out, avoid peak seasons. And then say, kind of when you're talking with your advertiser about potentially doing this, maybe say, let's do 2 weeks where we're just monitoring and kind of seeing what's happening as business as usual. And then 2 weeks where we're doing this, and let's see the difference. Or maybe a month or 2 months. And really kind of make sure that you're keeping eyes on it and delivering upon kind of the goals that you set up with them. Yeah, again, update your bids, no brainer, just regular optimization stuff. And again, AutoBidder takes all of this into account and does it for you. So that's another really good reason to use something like conversion optimization. Yeah. So again, if you're using time decay or linear or position based, again, my favorite, and you notice that certain activities are driving incrementally more conversions than you thought, AutoBidder again is going to account for that and start to try to drive more of those conversions in that particular campaign, so that you're getting exactly. So you actually end up seeing performance. And again, this is the way to make it the most actionable, AAB, is just implement conversion optimizer, get an attribution model going, and see what happens. So yeah, automated bidding, it's great. And then, monitor the test. Don't make any giant changes. When you're doing this test period with your attribution model, don't turn off all your high funnel activities, or don't, start a new strategy. This is something that you should be doing small changes, like updating your bids or updating your creative, but don't majorly like change your strategy around what you're doing, or else it's not really going to work and it's going to feel kind of silly. And then finally, here's how to act. Here's what to do. This is my favorite report to look at in AdWords. It's like right in your campaign overview, and it allows you to see like this period versus last period. What did we see? What conversion actions did we see? Are we seeing more? Are we seeing more people through the door? Did our spend change dramatically? Like, are we seeing more high value versus low value conversions? This kind of shows you exactly kind of the breakdown of, did this actually work? Is this something that's driving results? And if we see results like this one, like, yeah, that's pretty cool. If not, again, that's really good data for you guys to say, maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Maybe we're not doing the right types of things. Or maybe this is someone who just doesn't need an attribution model. Their path to purchase is short enough that it's not something that they need to think about. So another thing, especially with data-driven, but with any attribution model that you're going to see, is you're going to have a better understanding of where people are spending time before they convert. So like with position-based, for example, you're going to see the entry point. Where are they coming in? So it allows you to kind of see if people are coming in and then like not converting, or like it's taking them a long time to actually get to conversion, or they're kind of like, they convert, but like not a very high value conversion. That's ammo that you can use to say, look, we need to optimize this path. Like we need to get better creatives for YouTube. We need to make it clearer what they need to be doing so that we can shorten this path to conversion so they don't go elsewhere. Same thing with search campaigns or Gmail ads campaigns. Like if we see that a lot of people are like coming in here and then like maybe not doing anything for a while, again, that's something where we need to be like, we need to be clearer here. We need to have make it easier for the advertiser or for the consumer to understand what exactly they're expected to do before they purchase. This is all really actionable insight that you can glean from this. And then, yeah, re-examine early influence keywords. So take a look at what seems to be driving kind of these first click interactions, or which products are driving these, and see, are they as efficient as they can be? Or am I bidding up high enough to make sure that this is actually getting good results for me? Again, pretty no-brainer stuff, but it is kind of worth the gut check of like, once I do this, is it actually, am I doing this efficiently or not? And finally, evolve your approach to attribution as measurement gets better. This is something that we are improving all the time. This is, again, kind of the very cutting edge of what Google has to offer you guys in terms of understanding the mobile landscape. So I'm going to be very kind of active with you guys, making sure that you guys are on the forefront of like any changes we make to models or any new models that come out, especially with like data-driven, once that actually gets launched publicly to everybody in AdWords and in analytics. This is something that we can really operate against. So there's an old attribution saying in attribution that like all models are wrong, but some are useful. Hopefully you realize by now how exactly kind of AdWords attribution can be helpful, and kind of which advertisers might actually benefit from something like this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So finally, I know that you guys don't just do Google. I know, shocker.
Mostly though.
It's okay. Honestly, like in this digital landscape, like it would be kind of irresponsible not to look at other channels. People interact with media everywhere. And so if you're really looking to get the best results from advertising, like you need to be hitting people wherever they are. That's just kind of the nature of the game. And we get this. Like I totally understand that that's something that you need to do. And you can apply these lessons. So like if we figure out that people are really interested in video content or like really engaged, and like that's a big starting point for them, and you're not doing like Facebook video, do it. Or if we kind of figure out that people are like very interested in Gmail ads and you're not doing like a regular like email marketing campaign, but that is a suggestion. Like this is something that you can make actionable outside of AdWords, so that it's not just like, oh, super like navel gazing, like Google focus. It's like, no, this is something that will enrich your advertising and hopefully like your business on a larger scale than just what are they doing on like paid search. And actually, so we've already talked so much about auto bidding. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore. I've included like this giant section about auto bidding, but I think that's probably good. Actually, that slide is interesting. So one final thing is that auto bidding, as you guys know, is like does bid specific to each auction, and it's extremely important when you're using an attribution model to bid higher on the things that drive conversions, obviously, and lower on the things that don't. So this accounts for that automatically, makes your job super easy. and hopefully kind of generate some automatic growth. And I think that should just about do it for this training. What do you guys think? Any questions? Any follow-up? Yes, please.
Yeah, campaigns or your campaign have a lot of data in place, mobile, level lagging, location. When you shift your attribution modeling, is that just leave it as it is for now? Worry about adjusting later?
Yeah. So with something like a mobile location ad schedule, like regular RLSA bid adjustments, I would say when you're doing like a control versus evaluation period, I wouldn't change a ton of that. If you start to see though, like midway through like your flight on like doing this test period, that like, oh man, people are way more engaged on mobile than I thought, and I'm bidding down by like -50, like that's something that you can then take to the advertiser and say, look, we've already found this out. We already know that this is happening. And that's something to kind of put in your back pocket for after the control and say, like, this is the immediate change we need to make here. I mean, like, how many of you guys are bidding down currently in one or more of your campaigns on mobile because it doesn't look like it's converting? Yeah. So this basically, again, I know that we've been screaming mobile from like the top of the roofs forever and ever and ever, but this basically gives you data that says, not only do we think that this is happening, not only do we know that this is growing in every vertical without exception, but this is what's actually happening for you. Here's what people are doing on their phones. Here's like all of the assisted conversions that were driven by mobile. This is something that you really do need to be thinking about because it is impacting you. And you can say like very quantifiably, like this is how much it's impacting you and here's what we need to do to account for it. Any other questions? Anything about like models? Yes, please.
Yeah, so are you like suggesting, I guess, using the time to lag report kind of as a gauge, like, yeah, changing attribution model would be good or no? Right, am I understanding that
Yes.
right? So it's like a day that's not great. So I guess my question is, like, I'm thinking of one time I have specifically that's I've had for a while, and their search campaigns are like very high intent focused.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just looked at theirs and it's around a day, which is more.
Yeah.
But we don't have a ton in terms of display or video. Wouldn't that change that lag time? Does that make sense? Like,
so basically,
I'm looking at it as
yeah.
like search is super intent, high intent. So they're
Yeah.
probably going to be a day.
Yeah.
Two. But if I start introducing YouTube or a lot more in display, won't that time to lag change? Am I right?
Yes, but not because behavior is changing. Does that make sense? So basically, if by introducing like higher funnel activities like display, like YouTube, like whatever we decide to do, if the time to conversion increases, it's probably because you're reaching new people
Right.
who are higher up in their process,
Right.
and they're converting. So you will actually, at the end of the day, be getting more conversions. But it's not because people are all of a sudden like seeing you on YouTube versus search, or like searching with intent on search, right? It's like people who don't necessarily know to do that becoming aware and then searching with intent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So basically,
then
it's like,
in turn, the lag time.
so it's not necessarily a bad thing to have your time lag increase, as long as it's not like you're going from like 3 days to like 72 days or something like that. It's if you start introducing higher funnel activities and you see that increases, that's very normal behavior. Like it's what kind of expected.
Right, and that's what. So I guess it's safe to say that I wouldn't necessarily totally base changing my attribution on that. Because this account in particular, we're like trying to get more volume and struggling to.
Yeah.
So we're introducing display, we're introducing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
With last click, you probably won't see a direct conversion to that, but with a different attribution model, it'll introduce them to the funnel.
Right, but if I look hopefully just the time lag is like a day, and I'm like, I don't need to change my attribution model, I can probably reconsider that for introducing.
Well,
If you're introducing more research-based or lower intent traffic.
Yeah.
Well, and if you do introduce higher funnel activities and your time lag doesn't change, so it's basically like, where people are converting doesn't change, time lag doesn't change. There's like you're getting hits, but nobody's doing anything on those higher funnel activities. That means one of two things. It means that we're either not doing the higher funnel activities correctly, or like we're not getting the right messaging out there, or like it's not resonating for whatever reason at that point in their funnel, or it's just not an advertiser that needs it. So like if you decide to start doing like display advertising for your plumber, like probably not going to see a lot of great results there, if only because like people don't tend to like think about, oh, well, I saw this ad for this one plumber, he must be really good. It's more like, I just need a plumber that's near me who can come today, So it's really advertiser dependent and also like messaging dependent. And that's why, again, attribution modeling is way more actionable beyond just like, again, how do I bid? How do I, allocate my budget? It's if something looks like you're getting hits and you're still not getting conversions, it's either that we need to change the messaging or change the creative that we have, or stop doing it altogether. It's not going to be the right time to hit somebody. It's not going to be like useful enough to influence somebody one way or the other.
Does it work with all conversion types?
Yes.
And can you set different attribution models for the different conversion types?
I believe so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think you can.
I'm not sure about store visits. That's one that I have to check on because that's a display.
I have a looking to, and one of my display stuff shows up in that.
None of it does?
Or the package tool where you're switching that display.
Doesn't?
Yeah.
There's like none of my display, which I want to see because I feel like it's driving a lot of my branded stuff in my display. And I
That-
never my clients know on.
What could be happening is it could be somebody who clicks on an ad then converts organically, and that's something that's really hard for us to even view through conversions are a terrible metric to measure that because it's so inaccurate all the time. So that's something that I would probably say, let's look at analytics and see if we can see anything more meaningful in there. And it could be in analytics, like we see that this behavior is confirmed, and so they're maybe not coming back through.
Yeah, so I mean, we have about 40,000 in the last month people who came to the site
Through display.
through display, and we have conversions directly to it, but in the attribution modeling,
It's not showing.
it's not showing.
Let me take a look at that with you a little bit later and kind of see what's going on. Yeah.
So what's the best, actually, maybe this doesn't even matter, but what's the best way to see the funnel? So like, say you're using the weighted one where it's like 40, 40, 20, and you have a bunch of conversions showing for 40% of where they're entering and 40% of where they're exiting
Yeah.
or finishing, I guess I should say. What's kind of the best way to figure out? Because I would assume often there's common paths,
Yeah.
right? Like keywords that introduce them to the brand, and then they follow up a specific way. I think, does it matter, like, to try to set up your funnel that way, or should we just pay attention to, hey, these are driving, these first clicks are actually helping convert? Is that kind of the focus?
So what I would say in terms of actually understanding the funnel
Yeah.
is it kind of just helps you build a picture of what's happening where
Right.
and like what is actually influencing. So and it's likely that you have multiple funnels and multiple conversion paths for each account and for each conversion action even. So
Yeah.
basically what I do when I'm trying to kind of position this to an advertiser is I bucket them as we know that for this particular conversion action, people are either coming in through YouTube or display or these particular keywords. And that's our entrance high funnel. And then they're re-engaging with remarketing or dynamic or Gmail or customer match, and that's mid funnel. And again, it's not I'm not mapping out each specific path. I'm just
Yeah.
saying these are the activities that are driving this, as we can see from the attribution model. This is where we're re-engaging. So this is the medium touch point that's driving X% of conversions, and then they're finally converting through this one. So basically, rather than trying to figure out if YouTube or display is more efficacious at driving entrance, it's
Yeah.
this is all something that's working. Display might actually be driving more, so let's budget higher there. But we do know still that YouTube is driving some, so let's make sure that we're budgeting appropriately. Does that answer your question?
Would you suggest structuring your campaign that way? So once you get this in place, and you start seeing some high, mid, and low funnel keywords, you actually pull your high keywords into a specific campaign to designate spend to them.
I typically don't do that, and the reason why is that with AdWords best practices, it's by and large going to be more beneficial for you to bucket them in terms of category rather than in terms of place on the funnel, and then bid for each keyword based on whether or not they're actually driving conversions. And again, conversions in this case mean something way different than last click conversions. So if we see that this is something that's driving, based on our attribution model that we pick, it's driving more conversions than we thought, bid up. And kind of allocate enough of the budget to the ones that are driving, and then for ones that maybe we thought were converting really well, but actually really aren't as much as we thought, but down. And so that's the way that you allocate the budget within kind of the well-structured campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we should probably introduce this to the sales team. Oftentimes, a lot of what we suggest right off the bat is just turning off the things that didn't work and refunneling that budget.
And to be totally honest, like as of a year ago, that's what I was suggesting too.
Yeah. And it still works in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It just depends on the situation.
And this is the advertisers that you know or like have a hunch would benefit, or they're doing something like billboards or TV spots. Like they're already doing it, they just don't want to do it in AdWords because they think it doesn't convert. Like, well, it does, and we'll prove it. You know what I mean? If it's something that's like a super tiny advertiser with like a very low budget and like really just wants like direct search, like it's probably not going to be somebody who's going to have a lot of appetite for display or YouTube anyway. So in that case, like it might not be as high of a priority as somebody who's like, I'm looking for growth. I really want to make sure that my profit is going up, like, or you know, we're stagnating a little bit. What can we do to make sure that we're kind of continuing to get as many conversions as we were?
Yeah.
That's a really good case for an attribution model.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Was this training helpful to you guys?
Extremely.
Yeah, probably the most out of any ever.
Really?
I feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually have, if you guys don't mind, I have a feedback form that just kind of gauges, because again, this is the first time I've ever done this training. It's the first time this has ever actually made this myself. So we're hoping to scale it to more agencies across our program. So I would love your feedback about if there's anything that went well or didn't go well, or any feedback that you have for me. It's like 3 questions. Would you guys mind filling that out for me?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let me go ahead and stop this hang on air.
Suggestion real quick.